And I think the key concept is if you don't own the key, you don't own the AI. So what's the trade? Today, they get 10,000, you get 100. They get 99% of the value of your information.
Welcome to Transcend Money Community. My name is Tony, and today we have the pleasure to have an interview with David Johnston, that he is a Bitcoin OG. Also, he wrote the first white paper for Dapps, right? Mm-hmm. And now he's working in I would say, new concept of AI, decentralized AI, that he's gonna explain more about that in detail. So if you want, you can introduce yourself and just highlight the points you think are more interesting for crypto community.
Sounds good. Hey everybody, I'm David Johnston. As Tony said, I'm really interested in this concept of decentralized AI because I think it's important that I own my own intelligence, that I have access to all of these agents and AI systems without permission. I think that having freedom of thought and freedom of intelligence couldn't be more important. And so I've spent a lot of time in the last 3 years helping contribute to the Morpheus open source project, as well as other protocols that are giving people an easy way for them to own their AI. And I think the key concept is if you don't own the key, you don't own the AI.
Wow, that's a little bit deep. When you talk about key, is something related with crypto or not necessarily?
I think cryptography and specifically Web3 give us the building blocks we need in order to make AI owned by individuals, not by big companies or by governments. And so if I have the private key in my wallet and that controls my access to my agent, then I can store the memories, the prompts, the outputs, everything I do with my AI, I can control the outcome. Right now, if you're using Claude or ChatGPT, that's not your AI. That's their AI. Their AI has one purpose: to make them money. Mm-hmm. They want to burn tokens. They want to create outputs. They want to make customers happy, sure, but ultimately they want to aggregate the value to the company. And I want an AI that aggregates value to me. And so are you familiar with the concept of a fiduciary?
No.
In finance, this is like a lawyer or an accountant. They're responsible to you as a fiduciary to get you the best outcome. Who are they ultimately responsible to? And so I want an AI that's a fiduciary to me, that is trying to make me money, that's trying to produce me value. Maybe that's trying to cut my costs, use less tokens. There's all these different ways that, if you've heard this term of alignment, and people always talk about how do we align the AI? To me, the only solution is to align the AI to the individual. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to align it to a group or vague sort of humanity goals. You want the individual to control their AI. And that's given us the best outcome in free markets. If the person can say what they want to buy, where they want to live, how they want to work, who they want to marry, these should be individual choices. The same should be true in AI.
I'm very curious now with this, we can call private AI, so public, I don't know how to define, but like ChatGPT or Cloud Code or all these big companies.
Let's call them surveillance AI.
Surveillance, yeah. Because what I'm thinking is like they have our identity, yep. So they can create an avatar of us because we are every day giving them more information about ourselves, sure. Just by making questions, right?
Yep.
So I don't know how that data is treated, but for sure, if this is getting to their servers, they can use it, right?
Well, and let's talk practically about how they use that information. Today in Web 2, Google, Meta, all these companies run based on advertisement. So they take your data and they manipulate you. They want you to go here, not there. I had this happen the other week. I was using Google and I didn't realize they're now putting ads in the Google Maps. And so when I clicked on I thought was my doctor's office, it took me to a different doctor.
Whoa.
On the wrong side of town because somebody had paid an ad to manipulate my behavior even though I didn't know it was happening until afterwards, I realized what was happening. And so that's a small example, but how much more important is your mind? The AI, you're having all these very personal conversations about deep things, your relationship, about your finances, about what you're running your business.
Everything.
Way more important than the things you were saying for Google to find me directions. And so the same thing's going to happen. They're going to take that data and they're going to monetize it and make as much money as they can. So let's think about real numbers. When you use Google and Meta and all these products today, how much money do you think they make off of you per year?
That's
number of dollars. Average.
I have no idea.
If you earn, let's say, $50,000, maybe you earn $25,000 discretionary, right? The money that you buy, not just your house and the basics, but you spend, on food and other things, $25,000 a year.
Okay.
Half of that money is spent on advertising.
Wow.
And most of those advertising dollars are going to 3 or 4 companies. And so as a general estimate, they're probably making $10,000 a year off of your data.
That's amazing.
And what do you get back? You get some free services.
Right.
You get search, you get email, you get a few other things. It probably costs them $100 a year to give you those services. So what's the trade? Today, they get 10,000, you get 100. They get 99% of the value of your information. And they've gotten away with this because people don't know that their data has value. So my theory is that if we can change that dynamic, we can change that ratio. Maybe people are still willing to sell their data, but maybe it should be 50-50 and not 99-1, right? That would be a very different world if we even got a small amount of the value of our data that we're creating from the companies that are using it. And there's no way through regulation. The EU has tried, other jurisdictions have tried. Nobody's been able to force them to share that value with people. We have to do it as individuals. If I have the agent, I have the AI, I can choose which service to use. All of a sudden, I use the one that gives me the most value.
Wow, you're talking in my mind about a big revolution, because right now it's like big corporations, they want to sell something, they go into another big corporation to reach like the retail, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I understand you well, but you're saying like maybe the retail can sell directly because they are the ones that they want to buy, right?
Yeah. And that's never been possible for a couple of reasons. One, there was no way to do micropayments. How do you pay somebody 5 cents for their attention? How do you pay them 10 cents? You couldn't do it. But now, thanks to Base, thanks to stablecoins, thanks to blockchains, I can send 1 penny and it gets there in 1 second.
But
and I can have my agent do it.
But the way we are in Base, thank you very much for the space.
And so that's the first thing you had to unlock, is the ability to make those micropayments. So now we can do that. So I've set up my agents on Base to make micropayments. So if there's anything I need to buy, they have access to some money in a wallet and they can make the payment for me. My agents are doing transactions every day.
Wow.
So that's the first piece. Are you familiar with the cloud tax?
Cloud tax?
Yeah, it's not a real thing, it's a phrase, the cloud tax.
Okay.
Usually it's talking about AWS or about Google Cloud, because there's all these companies that build on them and they charge them for using their cloud, right? 50% of all money on SaaS, on software, goes to the cloud.
Right.
So no matter how successful your company is, AWS and these big clouds are always taking most of the money. So no matter who wins, no matter how hard you work, no matter how successful you are, they'll take most of the profit for themselves. And so again, it goes back to, how do we create a new dynamic where people have choice and there's competition and they aren't locked into these walled gardens? And the value can flow to them, not just to a couple of tech companies.
So how you envision that? That is it going to be decentralized computing? Or
funny you should bring that up. That's a little bit of what Morpheus does.
Okay.
Is connect people that want to run the AI models with the people that want to use them. Because I hear often from people, oh, if you want local AI, just buy a big computer and you can run the AI.
Mm-hmm.
That's not realistic for most people. It would probably cost you $20,000, $50,000 to buy a server or a computer for a small model to run the model. So what you need instead is a marketplace like Morpheus, where people can provide the models who have the hardware, and other people that don't have the hardware can pay them. So already on Morpheus, we're seeing this huge increase in demand for people who want to use the open weight models. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with the open weight models?
Yeah, 100%.
So for your community, there's GLM 5.2. It's probably the first open weight model that is as good as Claude, right? So for coding, for building websites, for building apps, anything you want to do, now there's an option where you don't have to pay the big tech company. You can run the open weight model on hardware and somebody can connect with you to do it.
But what about the challenge of the pricing? This can be competitive, or you have to pay a little bit of premium to be private?
No. Right now, GLM 5.2 running on Morpheus is 5 times cheaper than Claude.
Okay, that's interesting.
And nobody's collecting your data. You can have it encrypted. You can make it totally private. And you can prove with the encryption it's actually private.
That's pretty cool. I think a little bit the challenge here will be, like always, education, how you can really understand how private is it, right? Because that's the main challenge. And I don't know right now if privacy is a big concern. For sure, for crypto people,
sure,
it's a big concern. Right. But for regular users, I think not yet. And maybe it will be too late when it's their concern.
I like to say that privacy doesn't matter until it really matters. And then usually it's too late.
Exactly.
And so one of the reasons Morpheus exists is these countries are starting to restrict the AI models. So you live in China, you haven't been able to use OpenAI for years. But now the EU has their restrictions coming in August.
Right.
The US has already banned Fable 5. Right now, GPT 5.6. It hasn't been released because the government says, oh, not for the people, only for us, right? And so it doesn't matter to you unless you're one of the billions of people who live in the countries that are affected by the restrictions. Right. It was the same thing for Bitcoin. So many people in the West say, I don't understand Bitcoin. Why do I need this? I didn't have to explain it to my friends in Argentina.
Yes.
My friends in Argentina, their currency had collapsed 3 times in their lifetime. They understood Bitcoin.
Very quickly.
The guy who wanted to send money to his mom in Mexico or Nigeria, he understood Bitcoin. It was very simple to understand because for 4 or 5 billion people, they have a very bad government currency.
Right.
And inflation is high. For people in America, oh, it's an investment, it's speculation. No. For the people that it really matters for, it was life or death.
Yes.
And it changed their lives.
Who knows, maybe for US in some years or whatever.
Sure. So I think it will be the same thing here. If you're in a country where there are no restrictions and, maybe it doesn't affect you, but I think for probably 4 or 5 billion people, this will be their only way to access intelligence.
And to be practical, for example, if you want to use Morpheus, so you need crypto or you can do with fiat also?
You can do it with fiat, credit card. Just go to app.mor.org, app.more.org, and you can get a key.
We'll put down below.
Yeah, and you can get a key just like you would from Claude, and you give that to your agent, and it can use the cheaper model.
So you can use any harness or Cloud Code?
Yeah, Cloud Code or any harness that will accept another key from a different service. So you could use OpenClaw, you can use Hermes, you could use OpenCode, you could do any of the harnesses where you can give it your own key. Now you have an option that's 5 times cheaper than Claude. So we've seen this huge explosion. This is only the last 3 weeks. GLM 5.2 just came out. And finally, the open source models have closed that gap where they're just as good as the...
And it's getting better.
And it's getting better very quickly. I keep reminding people, the open source tends to win. There are more of us than there are inside any one company.
100%.
More minds, more data, more hardware, more people that care about these things.
And Linux, Bitcoin, all this already prove the model, right?
Linux is 95% of all servers. Android is 80% of all phones. And it has to be that way because of economics. So we need the same thing here, is where somebody with very limited hardware can still access the best intelligence. That's why Morpheus was created. And I read the white paper in September of 23. It was very inspiring. I started contributing the code, and it's a community project.
No, really?
No VC, no company, no token sale. All the tokens were earned by the community since day one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you need? Which requirements do you have to bring the hardware?
Usually it's people that are already running the hardware for other purposes. Sometimes they have a data center, maybe they're running nodes or validators, and they want to use their GPUs for new purpose. Like, give you an example, people used to mine Ethereum with GPUs. Ethereum switched to proof of stake. So now any of those people that have lots of GPUs, they could mine the Morpheus token and earn it for providing the models.
So there is a currency inside Morpheus that is a token.
It's like Bitcoin, but for AI. You can earn them by providing the models. Those are the miners.
And it's Base token? Or
it's on Base and Arbitrum and Ethereum. You can bridge it to any of them, but most people use Base.
Okay.
It's fast, it's cheap, it's easy. This month, the amount of usage on Morpheus increased by 100%.
Wow.
Month over month. So there's a lot of demand for intelligence, and people are starting to discover it.
There are some companies, for example, OpenRouter, you can route also AIs, but not always is stable.
Sure. Well, and some people in the Morpheus community use OpenRouter to provide inference on Morpheus. And some people use Venice. Venice is the biggest provider of inference to Morpheus.
Can you talk about more?
Sure. So Venice is a company that does private inference. So if you want to use chat or image, they have good privacy. And some of their token holders use their inference and they put it on Morpheus to offer the models. So Morpheus is a marketplace. I don't own any GPUs. There's no Morpheus company to run any GPUs. It's just a protocol, right? So people are bringing the inference from Near and from OpenRouter and from Venice, all these different sources, and offering it together. But then you have a very powerful system because, like you said, OpenRouter can be sometimes up, sometimes down.
Right. And then you pay per token, or how it works?
Morpheus is interesting. Most people are using the API. So when you go to app.more.org, you just sign up for the API. So maybe you were using it for an hour, and maybe that cost, $5 or whatever of the credits. Right?
Okay.
So it tracks the amount of time, and it publishes that proof on chain. And the miner uses the proof on chain to collect his reward from the protocol. That's how it all comes together. Huh? It's the same model to you.
And the main benefit is privacy, or there is other
price
and price?
I mean, I was spending $6,000 a month on Claude credits in January. And then the better open source models came out. I was able to cut my bill by 80%. So I built a lot of websites. I built a lot of code. For me, it was a huge difference. And then all my friends started asking, hey, what about that Morpheus thing? My bill is getting very high. or they're trying to use the subscription. If you use the Claude subscription,
limited.
Oh, you ran out of credits after 5 days. See you in 3 weeks, right? Nobody can work like that. You need a tool that's always available.
Okay.
And that's affordable.
And how you see the future of Morpheus, like in 1-2 years?
Well, based on the current rate of growth, I think it has the opportunity to really go mainstream, and people are starting to build more and more projects on top of the community. Venice has been very successful. They started in the Morpheus community in 2024. They've reached 3 million users.
Wow.
Other projects like Warden, I think 20 million users on their agentic wallet that uses inference from Venice, which can start it on Morpheus. So all these things are coming out because you need these building blocks that won't turn off, that aren't censored, that you don't need permission.
Because how you use the inference in Morpheus is a wallet. What do you need to use Morpheus?
The advanced user, if you have a wallet, you can stake the token and you have access to the inference. And that's very important. Think about why Ethereum is so powerful. Is because I can publish a smart contract and it will always be there, right? 24/7, 365, 10 years from now. Now think about smart agents. Agents that have a smart contract that are using Morpheus, it's the same thing. I can give my agent some tokens. It'll never run out of inference. It refreshes every day. So forever, that agent will work.
So they can pay with tokens.
Yeah. That's important. And that was the invention of Satoshi, was to create a way for the software to pay for its own hardware. As long as there was a human or a company that had to cut a check, it could turn off. It could turn off tomorrow, it could turn off next week.
Wow.
You can't build something like that.
So that means that this can go a little bit science fiction movie, because that means that the AI agent can try to find ways to make money to pay his own tokens, right?
Yeah, that's actually my definition of AGI, artificially generated income. If your agent is making you money, I think you've reached AGI. I think that's the real definition. Don't tell me about IQ level or benchmarks. Is it creating value?
So there are some experiments online already with this, so like trying to make your agent, but how is earning money? Like working for some human or trading?
It's simpler than that. Everybody's imagining the agents are going to go do random jobs. Just have it do your job. That's what most people are doing. And it started with the coders. The agent starts writing their code. Now it's for the marketers. It's making their images. It's running their campaign. It's doing the sales. Just pick a real job. You don't have to imagine anything new. Just pick an existing job, and if that person owns the agent, they get the benefit. So think about a salesperson. What if they could have 10 jobs? If their agent can do the work, they could earn 10 times as much money. I think people have this backwards. They think that, the AI will take the jobs. I think the AI will create more jobs than have ever existed if you own the agent. Otherwise, all the money goes to the company. It's their agent. It's their benefit.
Yeah, they can learn and take the job, right?
Sure. And so I think you'll bring your agent with you to all of your jobs. Just like you bring your phone, your computer, your network, your brain, your experience, your Rolodex, you'll bring your agent. You won't give that to them. You'll have a personal agent. The company will have its own agents, but you'll bring your unique harness and setup and access to intelligence.
So you will be like a superhuman, let's say.
I think so. Anybody with a smart agent will be light years ahead of everybody else. And they will keep most of the value they create instead of giving it to Claude or OpenAI or their company.
That's pretty exciting. But
I think it gives us an option for a bright future. Right? People are worried about AI. They're anxious, like that it will take the jobs. But it feels like something out of their control. This is how we bring it back in your control.
And a part of the inference, there is some project around Morpheus to create, or let's say, to market your AI agents, for example, for marketing, for coding, for whatever. There's something is moving around to create like synthetic workers with agents, or not yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm contributing to a few of those projects, actually. So the first one is when OpenClaw came out. It was a cool project, right? It got a lot of attention all of a sudden.
Yeah,
people
it was amazing.
Amazing. It was the personal agent. That's what everybody was waiting for. And more importantly, it's one that I could talk to on my phone. I talked to my agent on Signal. I send it messages.
Signal.
I don't have to go to my computer. I don't have to be an engineer. I don't have to type in the terminal. I can just speak to it like it's an employee. So I've spun up a website, install openclaw.xyz, and with one push of the button, somebody can spin up an agent. Nothing to download, no terminal, no tech required. Just create an agent, and it lives in a virtual machine. And whenever they want, they can download it and put it on their own machine if they want. All open source. So people can check that OpenClaw, install OpenClaw on GitHub. The other project I'm helping with is called Based AI, basedai.co. It's creating digital workers for the companies, but ones they can own, not owned by Claude, that are private and open source, and they can help you build your business. So if you're an entrepreneur and you need a salesperson, you can have a sales agent.
Okay, so you use the term digital worker.
Yeah.
Meaning like okay, I'm going to try to choose well my words. So it's basically like a human, professional human, but digital, something like that.
Yes, but today, realistically, the way that works is they are a team member. They listen to the meetings. They help create the notes. They work with the head of sales. They run ad campaigns. It's like adding staff without having to hire more people. It's about multiplying the productivity of your team members. So if you're a team of 5, but each of you could have 10 team members building all the different parts, you could act like a team of 50.
Yep. So let's say it's not like a professional human, it's like can do a specific task very well, right?
Yeah. And I think every member of a team should have something like Based AI, where they can use those agents to do many of their tasks.
So maybe we can call it something like Excel or Word or email, but with hyper powers, no?
Sure. Well, for example, why should you spend an hour every day reading emails?
Exactly.
Your agent can read all of the emails. You can put them into categories. You can find the important ones to respond to. You can draft the response. It can give you the draft and say, do you want to send this one? Then you just go click, 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 click.
Okay.
So let's take all the monotonous work and automate it.
So the business owners, they are concerned about the privacy. And I think this is the main challenge. Privacy, and also that the AI is doing something wrong. I think these are the two main concerns for business owners. What do you think is the main challenge now that we're going towards solving soon?
So I agree. And if you are concerned about privacy, you should realize if you're using Claude now, you have no privacy.
100%.
I don't care what they say. I don't care what it says in their policy. They have all the data. They'll train with it. They'll use it. They'll advertise, whatever they want, right?
Yes.
And so that's the no privacy option, but it's very convenient. It's very easy. Most people have heard of it, and they haven't even thought about the privacy aspect yet.
Yep.
But when a lot of the European regulations start in August, all of a sudden people have to deal with it. The other opposite of the spectrum is the open source.
In my mind, is like this is like the beginning of creation of something like Microsoft Office. So kind of intelligence that you need to run your business, basically, right?
Exactly. So, and that's why I'm putting so much time and effort into this. Is we needed the protocol first, and then you needed the agents, the OpenClaw moment, for people to realize it for retail, and then you also need a business solution where the businesses can use and access that benefit.
In fact, now in Europe, there are like very dramatical changes because there's a new law that is going to be imposed October 2027 with fines if you don't do that.
The EU AI Act, yeah.
And this is one, but the other one is like all the business documents in the company have to be machine first, meaning with this, no more PDF mandatories for humans. So meaning that when you do a commercial transaction like quotations or invoices or any kind of business document, you need to do it in a special language called UBL, Universal Business Language, and that is like a JSON or XML or something like this.
Which is a wild concept when you consider how bad the government's at its cybersecurity.
I 100% agree.
Which just means you're going to share all of that information with the next time there's a leak, the next time there's a hack, the next time the government falls over.
So that's going to be...
Just consider that all public information.
But what it means for businesses, like now they need a different kind of tools or software, right? Mm-hmm. Because before, most of the tools they were for humans, like email, Microsoft Office, and some communication channel like whatever, Slack, Telegram, or whatever company they use.
Mm-hmm.
But now with this machine first concept, even the ERPs, right? The ERPs is an interface between human and machines.
Sure.
So I think there's a great need now in Europe for this new transition to automate business, because what it means in Europe is like every company will be machine first.
Well, at least we're moving into an environment where creating tools is easier than ever before.
That's correct.
But this is part of why I want an agent is I think people ought to be able to choose which jurisdiction they do business in. And so we're sitting here at NS, right, the network school, in Malaysia, right next to Singapore. And if you have an agent that is doing the work, let's say in Singapore, well, then you have a choice to use that jurisdiction. And you have an agent sitting in London, you have an agent sitting in Austin, you have an agent sitting in Dubai, you have an agent sitting in El Salvador, all over the world. You know, we're going to have the optionality to choose which jurisdiction to do business. It'll be very easy to do it in different locations all over the world. And I don't even think they've thought through all the effects and ramifications of that. But people are about to have instant access to do business anywhere in the face of the earth.
Okay,
so they can try to put up these silly barriers, but if the friction is too high, people will just go other places, and the cost to go somewhere else is going down.
Exactly. So you're saying, because until now we have like physical person, we have corporations, different kind of entities, right?
Yeah.
And we had computer servers, but now we have this agent that is like almost human or is an intelligence.
Yeah.
That probably we have to define in which jurisdiction they belong to.
Did you see the proposal in Argentina? Argentina has a proposal to be the first country to recognize the agents to make their own entity.
Wow.
No human required, no tax, no friction, legally recognized. Everybody's going to have to react and follow that and decide how they're going to deal. And the people that are the friendliest will get a huge boom of activity. It's like welcoming the internet. The US, with freedom of speech, it welcomed the internet. You got Google and Amazon. All those companies are there because it was the friendliest jurisdiction. Do you know in the early days of the internet, this is a funny story, there were certain countries where you needed a license to build a website. No websites got built in those countries. It was in the US where you didn't need permission from anybody to build a website or create a software because it was all free speech, it was all language, it was all code. There was no barrier. And so whichever jurisdictions, Singapore or Argentina or Austin, wherever, that have the lowest barrier and move the fastest, it'll be the largest explosion of wealth we've ever seen.
Wow. I start to see it now that talking with you, and there are so many questions I have, like, for example, what is an AI? Because it's like where you have the inference, is the computer where you run the harness, is the wallet, but if it's you, because probably it's going to use first crypto because it's less friction, right?
Yeah.
Instead with crypto.
They don't have driver's licenses. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But with crypto, they don't need that, right? They can instantly have a wallet and start to move money. Yep. So it's very interesting because you can, in some way, decide where is the physical inference done, or maybe not. Because maybe if you are routing...
And if it's done encrypted, how would you even know? So where's the harness? Where's the hardware? Where's the inference? Where's the data? And how do you even know which human is using which agent?
Wow.
It's an encrypted channel. So good luck with their restrictions. Good luck trying to understand what's even happening. They're going to have to fundamentally change their systems because the old way, it's not going to work.
Now talking with you, I can see that it's even bigger revolution that I was thinking.
Oh yeah. We're talking about everything. This will be 99% of transactions in the future. It'll be most of the commerce. It'll be most of the work. My agents are already doing the majority of my code and the majority of my sales and the majority of my building. In a year, it'll be 100 times, 1,000 times. This is the thing that matters for the future. If we can win this battle and have free choice for each person, it's going to be amazing. If you lose that battle, right, in 23, they tried to make the open source models illegal. In the US, they did it in other jurisdictions. Fortunately, we got those rules overturned in 24, but it was very close to a bad scenario. So we have to keep building. We have to keep fighting for the private option, the free option. But fortunately, it's cheaper and it's better. You don't have to do this because of an ideology. You don't have to do it because you understand the philosophy. Yeah. Just tell them it's cheaper and it's better.
Okay, so in a practical way, because in Europe now everyone is like freaking out with all the new regulation. So where you cannot use AI from another outside Europe, you need to follow this new UBL, Universal Business Language, machine first data flows in your company. Mm-hmm. So most of the companies now, a lot of companies, in fact, we have some startups here. And I think...
Well, that's the great thing about a marketplace. You can choose where the inference is. So if you are a business in Europe and you need the hardware to be in Europe, you can just pick a provider in Europe.
Yes, 100% agree with that. But the thing is like how you teach people or how you give the trust to people. Because it can be private, but they need to understand a little. I think so maybe we can do a series of how to use it and how it works, something like this.
Sure, that'd be great.
Because I think probably because I think the main barrier is this one, privacy. If you can make people trust that it's private, then this can be mandatory to use. Because see if we can make like something. I think the privacy thing is important to make how we can do, like how we can show business that they can use this, for example, could be cool.
That'd be great. We'll do it.
Thank you very much for the interview, for your time, David. And I hope we do another one soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
See you.
All right.